The function for the Black Ferns, incredibly good function, I thought. I think all of us enjoyed it tremendously, and what a wonderful group of women. You know, so proud to have them both as our sporting ambassadors, but just the nature of the people and who they are and how they conduct themselves was really impressive. I think, with due respect for our proceedings today, that might have been the highlight of the day for many of us. Can I thank Councillor Alf Filipina, because I know, Alf, you put a lot of effort into that, and they were really worth the effort. Just to recap very quickly, you know, 5 times World Rugby Cup winners, the holders of the longest consecutive set of tests without defeat was, I think they got to 24, and you know, a superb, probably they are the world's best rugby team in terms of their track record, and 18 out of 28 of them come from Auckland, so there's something for the Auckland Blues to aspire to. Right, we won't go further down that line. Just before I call on the local boards to give their input, Waiheke and Rodney, just to note, item 8 on the agenda, there are no extraordinary items known, and number 9, no notices of motion have been received. So we'll go back, we'll have the local board input now, and then we'll move straight into the governance framework review, our decisions on the recommendations of the political working party. So maybe if I ask both local board representatives to come forward. Paul Walden from Waiheke Local Board, welcome Paul, and Fallon Puri from the Rodney Local Board. Fallon, welcome to, and Kath, sorry, yes, we've got you as well.
All here.
So Fallon's here, but he's just being sidetracked at the moment in a discussion.
Solidarity, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Right, Paul, would you like to lead off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, councillors. For those of you that don't know me, and most of the people around the table, everyone here does, there's bound to be a few officers that don't. I'm Paul Walden. To my right here is John Mewson, one of our local board members, and Kath Hanley to my left, who's our Deputy Chair presently, but she'll be assuming the role as the Chairperson for the second half of this term. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to this request of ours to present to your meeting today. We are here to speak to item 10 on your agenda, the Governance Framework Review. And I'd like to support and reiterate John Mewson's call and his challenge for the Waiheke community to be better enabled and empowered, to demonstrate what it can do and how we can make a more positive contribution to Auckland if given the chance and the right tools. I'd like to draw members' attention to the resolutions T and U on pages 13 and 14 of your agenda today. Officers are recommending that you approve the Waiheke Local Board pilot project and that the Waiheke Local Board has oversight of its implementation. We fully support these recommendations. We support the proposed approach to the Waiheke pilot and note that in its scope, the attendant formal evaluation process provides an excellent opportunity to test, revise and if needed reset the project as it progresses. We are fully committed to keeping the governing body and our fellow local boards informed as the pilot progresses. I'd like to recognise and thank the officers and my colleagues on the political working party, Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore for his steering the group through some interesting discussions. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Mayor for your promoting of this idea through your election campaign and the visits that you made to our community at that time, and your very thrifty challenge to council and encouragement to our community upon your election, which I think was one of the first announcements that you made. So I'd like to acknowledge that, and also in that the challenge that you have given to the organisation to be a bit more responsive in this space. We feel that the pilot provides a good basis for the Waiheke community and council to move forward together and address some of the thorny issues which we have been facing. I'm confident that it will make a huge difference to relationships and the island's ability to address some long-standing issues. The Governance Framework Review political working party processes demonstrated how challenging it has been to find real, practical and workable ways of making the Auckland Council model work. The Working Party has considered the big issues, and we intend to test as many possible proposed solutions and ideas as we can through the Waiheke pilot. We want to assure councillors and our fellow local board members who have supported us in the pilot that we are committed to looking at things that are common to all or most of the 21 local boards, that we intend to share our findings with them and with you, and we want to work together to find outcomes that work best for as many boards as possible. I'm now going to hand over to Kath for the next part of our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Our experience to date under our current delegated authorities is that genuinely empowered communities can do things really well and at significantly less cost if given the tools and support. And we intend to use the pilot to further test and confirm that view. A good example for us under the current regime, if you like, is our Austen Boat Club hard stand development project, which was managed by our local Waiheke Boating Club and achieved cost savings of approximately 50% on Council's own estimate of costs. Another one is the Little Onuroa Stream and Lagoon Cleanup Project, led by the community, which for the first time since records were started is now approaching safe swimming levels. So I guess what would be different under the pilot? Among many opportunities that we see, we're really looking forward to the appointment of a Waiheke operations manager, so-called, to coordinate council activities on the island and thus reduce both the direct and indirect costs locally and centrally of the duplication of effort. We're also looking forward to access policy resources, and I know this is widespread among local boards, this concern that we can't access them at the moment. The primary reason we want to access them is to move our recently refreshed, essentially Waiheke community strategy into the upcoming revision of the Hauraki Golf District Plan and thereafter into statutory frameworks. This would enable us to actively support the enhancement of the visitor experience on Waiheke, and we have more than 1 million visitors. We have just over 9,000 permanent residents. And of those million, more than 50% of those are fellow Aucklanders. We look forward to protection and restoration of our environment and improving the livability and economic development of our community for our residents. We further look forward to a much closer working relationship at the planning stages with CCOs, particularly AT, Panuku and ATED. Thank you.
So just lastly, just to round off, Mr Chairman, I just want to speak to our resolution supporting a local rate being investigated and tested further as a part of the Waiheke pilot. We said that this support is contingent on having full authority and accountability over local matters, operational practices and expenditure, consistent, of course, with any local rate appointment, and we intend to test these matters as a part of the pilot. In closing, there is much hard work to do, but we are committed to giving the Waiheke pilot our best shot and demonstrating that the gains we expect to make can be rolled out to other boards. Thank you for your time today, councillors and Mr Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul, Kath and John. I think we'll take questions separately from the two boards. So are there any, we're about to move into a significant discussion on the framework review, but are there any questions directed to the Waiheke local board here today? We've, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, colleagues. In terms of the powers that the Waiheke local board would like returned to the community, was there consideration given to the vexed question of consents and notifications, or more to the point, the very high number of non-notified consents and even retrospective non-notified consents? What's your comments? We obviously know that that has been a cause of much dissension and, if I might say, anger on Waiheke Island. So what's the local board's approach to this?
Well, thank you for the question, Councillor Lee. You know, yes, this is a very important issue for the community, and it's certainly, you know, an avenue that we would expect the pilot to be exploring. And, you know, part of this process is exploring, you know, what a whole range of things might look like under a different regime that's giving a bit more effect to community outcomes. So clearly a part of that is making sure that our planning framework is right, and we've just been through the redevelopment of a community strategy document, essentially Waiheke, and so there's a very, I guess there's a hierarchy, you know, or layers of significance here, but firstly is making sure that our planning framework going forward is actually giving effect to the aspirations of our community as articulated through that. And we would very much like to be having a conversation as time goes forward about actually getting some more tangible outcomes for the community as far as consenting is concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank all three of you for being here today and for your input, and no doubt you'll be here to listen to the discussion in the next agenda item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I will move
Happy
to
to
the...
second.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Fletcher. We thank Waiheke Local Board and members for their input in relation to the Governance Framework Review and for their attendance. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Fallon, I'd like to invite you to come. Welcome. Good to have the Deputy Chair of the Rodney Local Board here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today. I'll be quick. I'm here to speak in support of the option of local boards being able to be involved in the local rate pilot, so that is in the agenda today. The Governance Framework Review has been described by some staff as a once-in-a-decade opportunity to improve the governance of local boards. The decisions you make today will decide what goes forward for further investigation and what doesn't. The local rate option, its advantages were not well understood, as it was a complex and, on the face of it, dramatic change. And I know I went to a number of local boards and talked to them about the options around this. It was clear to a lot of people that they hadn't understood it, and if you have a look at local board feedback, you'll see that most boards have said that they want further investigation, and to me that signals a lack of understanding, and perhaps the process should have gone on a bit longer, but it didn't, and here we are today. You all have some major issues that you have to grapple with over the long-term plan financially, and surely it's time that local boards took full responsibility for their budgets, and that includes raising funds rather than blaming you guys when something doesn't get financed, and that's a problem that we seem to go through every LTP. The local boards, some of them were quite enthusiastic about retaining that option to blame the governing body for their financial woes. In my opinion, more boards would support a local rate if they could see how it works. A pilot would allow this, and it would also give staff and the board the opportunity to work through any issues identified in this process. Franklin, Manurewa, Waiheke and Rodney local boards are keen to progress local rates. I would plead with all of you not to cut this option off for the local boards. We would like to be able to pilot local rates, and it's an important option that could be important in the future for managing council's finances. The Rodney Local Board is enthusiastic about being the first to pilot local rates. We believe this would be welcomed by our ratepayers who want better transparency around how their rates are spent, and it would also allow us to raise funds through local rates to deal with growth issues in our towns. So just finally, I'd just like to request that you support our desire to pilot a local rate and make sure that that's clearly stated in the decision you make today. Thank you.
Thanks, Fallon. Thank you for being so succinct and to the point. Once again, we'll be having a wider discussion on this shortly, but are there any questions that councillors have? Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Two questions, if I could. You just mentioned there the local rates giving greater transparency to ratepayers. Is there opinion, your opinion or the board's opinion about if that's available to ratepayers? I'm thinking probably of the Northern Action Group and the, you know, that area that wants to break away from the super city. Do you think that might help that cause and take some of the angst out of that community or that group? That would be question one. And question number two is just around, and I do support the pilot going forward. Comments around if that has to be done regionally and it can't be done by local board. Have you got comment around that with the work that you've done in the
So the last question first. I understand from talking to staff that that a pilot could be done. It's not simple to do one board and not do others. But it is possible. One of the advantages with Rodney is that it is an outlier board, so we don't have a lot of overlapping facilities with other local boards, so whereas maybe an inner city board that might be more difficult to do. But the indication I'd had that particularly Franklin, Waiheke and Rodney, that wouldn't be impossible to do. Right. I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. And that the other question, I mean, the Northern Action Group issue is not going to go away, and even if in the end the decision is made that, you know, part of Rodney isn't going to split away, that attitude is there and it's deeply entrenched in Rodney, and there is a perception that people don't understand how their rates are spent, and we feel that a local rate would offer a lot more transparency. It would also mean more accountability to the local board, and we'd be responsible for how that money is spent, but we're very comfortable with that because we think that constituents would support that, and ratepayers would be happy to see where their local rates were spent and holding their local politicians accountable. So yeah, we think it's very important for dealing with that.
Right, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any further questions? If not, I'll move the resolution to thank Fallon for his input in relation to the Government Framework Review and for attending here today, seconded by Councillor Sayers. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carry.
Thank you.
And please join us for the rest of the meeting, Fallon. Right, we now come to item number 10 on our agenda, the Governance Framework Review.